on, come on.
My jacket's caught.
This came about from me doing a poll, mainly on Twitter, to let people choose what movie we watch. And I immediately regretted it once we watched this. Not because it's not great, just because I've seen this movie so many times. And the funny thing was, like, everything else on the list, I wouldn't have mind watching. Us was on the list. That's a movie I saw once. I didn't like it, but I wouldn't mind giving it a second chance.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's
Never.
interesting that you say that about Us, because I kind of had the same reaction. I liked the premise of it. I just did not like how it finished. I didn't like it
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. Have you seen it more than once?
Nope, just saw it one time in the theater. We have the DVD, but yeah, I haven't watched it since the theater.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind revisiting it because I like you, I didn't care for it. I probably didn't like it. I didn't like, I liked it less than you did, but I'm willing to give it another shot. So I
Right.
wouldn't have mind that. I love Blackula. I haven't seen that movie in ages. I wouldn't have mind rewatching that. What was the other movie?
Get Out was on
Get Out.
there.
Yeah, Get Out. I like that a lot, but I only saw that once as well. So
Yeah, once for me as well.
all of those movies would have been a great win, but everybody picked this one. So what are you going to do when you give people the option? Yeah, they're going to pick what they want. But I think moving forward, I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to make better selections, but I'll put my Twitter down below, and yeah, we'll come up with some movies and put it on the list, and you guys can vote for the one you want. But I will omit movies that I don't want to see, which I should have done this time around. So I'm assuming you've seen this movie a bunch of times as well, right?
Yeah, I saw it. Actually, yeah, I've probably seen it 20 times in my life. I've seen it a couple times in the past year. Actually, the very first time I saw this was Halloween night 1982. I was in grade school, and MTV, which was only a year old at that time, showed it Halloween night at midnight. And I knew almost nothing about the film. I was just a kid, but I knew a little bit about it. So I forced myself to stay awake. I watched. I know I'm not the only kid in my class who stayed up to watch it, but I'm the only one who actually finished it because it finished at 1:30 in the morning, and I was on a school night, so I was tired the next day. But yeah, and I've kind of made it a Halloween tradition, probably more so in the last 10 years or so, where I'll watch it on Halloween night.
How many movies do you watch on Halloween?
Generally two. I usually watch Halloween, and I watch another movie called The Children, another Halloween movie. I
I don't think
haven't
I've
actually
heard of that
watched
one.
Halloween. Yeah, it came out in 1980. It's just a campy horror movie. That's all. But yeah,
Is
I've
it
seen Night
is
of the
it
Living
the
Dead
one
many
where
times.
the kids are like shot at the end of the movie and it was like controversial because of that?
No, no, the kids get they go through this gas field while they're on the bus or something, and it turns them into like zombies or something, and they get these black fingernails. And the only way to kill them, if they touch you, then they burn you to death. The only way to kill them is to cut their hands off. So
Interesting. Because there was a period of time where there were a lot of killer kids movies. Like that was like a thing for a while. So I wasn't sure if maybe that was one I saw that I didn't remember, but that doesn't sound like something I've seen. Sounds
okay,
good though. Yeah.
yeah, it's campy, but I like it.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if this is necessarily a movie we need to break down. This is public domain, so I think a lot of
Mhm.
people have seen this movie. If they haven't, they can just search YouTube and find a copy of it. So I just made some notes and also read some trivia, and I'll just go over some of that, and you can also give your thoughts as well. So the first compilation DVD I did was a film called Volt of Terror, and on it was an incomplete film I did that I cut together, a short film I did, and then some public domain films. I'm sure you have collections of DVDs similar to this, where it's just compilations and anthologies and things
I've
like
got
that.
several, yes.
Yeah, and on it is Night of the Living Dead is one of the films. Also, is a short film I did called Good Samaritan in New York City, and actually, in that movie, it was a short black and white film. It was only like 4 minutes long, but I get my face slashed on a subway car. And much like Night of the Living Dead, we used chocolate syrup because it was black and white. So what was interesting about the shoot is when we were all finished, I was covered in chocolate syrup. The subway car was covered in chocolate syrup. And this was the last stop. Then the train started moving. And then all of the cast and crew moved to one side of the car, and they left me at the other side because I had all the evidence on me and the chocolate syrup was everywhere. Eventually, some cops came on the car, and I had to like tilt myself in a way that they couldn't see the chocolate syrup on me. Because I'm thinking, God, if I go to jail for this stupid short movie, I'm going to feel like an idiot. So, yeah. And another thing about that is, as to why it's on that DVD is because it's public domain. And I'm sure you may have read up on this as well, but the reason it was public domain was because of a name change. The film went through a few different names, and ultimately when they switched to Night of the Living Dead, they didn't put copyright either on the title credits or somewhere in the credits. And at the time, the way the copyright laws were written is that if you didn't do that within the first year of distribution, then your film became public domain. I think it was Night of the Omnibus and Night of the Flesh Eaters were the other titles before Night of the Living.
Yeah, that's a bummer for George Romero because he's obviously made a mint anyway, but he would have made a mint on this one because it's a classic.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's like there are two ways to look at it. One way is, you're right, he lost a fortune because much like Disney with their properties, a lot of public domain characters, and much like Universal with their monsters, a lot of public domain characters, but when you put your own spin on it, you can copyright that version. And while there were zombies before Night of the Living Dead, I think the rules that he put in place, which aside from the movie, he could have copywritten like his zombies in it and those rules. And those rules are kind of the rules people followed since then with the kill shots. It's very different from the Haitian religious,
the voodoo stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different. So he could have copywritten that whole. But the other way to look at it is that if it wasn't public domain, would it have been as popular, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I do think it's a very fine movie. It's very well done. But maybe the fact that it's public domain got it out there more. I don't know. And then, like you said, it did set the precedent. You also got to think that the sequel, Dawn of the Dead, came out in, was it 1978, I think. So that was probably a time when not as many people had seen it. It was before cable was as wide open as it became in the 80s, and there was no videotapes back then. So there must have been some reason to have a call for a sequel to that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because it definitely wouldn't have been as widespread as it was if the copyright was there. The fact that everyone could play it and everyone can show it mean that it really got legs. Much like this became a Halloween classic, like you said, you want to watch it in Halloween. But there's also the Christmas classic, the James Stewart one.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. That became a classic because it was public domain as well. So who knows, alternate timeline, what would have happened if they didn't. But you're right, there's merits to it. And that's the other thing about the film is the flaws could be considered budgetary, which there are many flaws, but its virtues can be considered visionary, which is important to remember because this is a very flawed film, and it has a lot of great assets and a lot of great flaws to it. So it's kind of like, it's not like Cujo, which was like half of it was terrible and half of it was great, but it is a mixed bag in a sense, in that there are a lot of flaws in the movie. There's a lot of day for night stuff that just doesn't make sense. Like you look out the window, one shot it's day and then the next shot it's night. There is a lot of Plan 9 from outer space type flaws to this movie. There's a montage scene where the action is showed sped up in montages as they are, but then the radio playing is played in real time, which doesn't make sense because then the radio would be also in sped up time as well. There's this scene where Barbara's knocked out and then Dwayne, the Ben character's he's bordering up all the windows. But then as soon as he's finished bordering up all the windows and he goes and sits down next to Barbara, right behind him, there's a window that's completely unbordered.
I didn't notice that, but yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that that's in the movie. Another interesting thing is this movie, Romero did admit that it was based off of or inspired a lot by Carnival of Soul and The Last Man on Earth. And ironically, all of those films are in the public domain. You know?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
The Last Man on Earth is a movie I saw probably about a year or two before I saw Night of the Living Dead. We used to have a TV channel from Green Bay, Wisconsin, that used to show like horror movies on Saturday night, and Last Man on Earth was one that they showed on their show, and I loved it. I still love it. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I plan to revisit it soon, actually.
Of those three, like late 60s, I guess they were in the 60s, right?
I think
Late
so.
60s? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of those, I think Carnival may have been the early 60s, but they're all
Yeah,
in the 60s.
actually, I think Last Man on Earth may have been like
59
62.
or
Son,
60.
I think it was in the 60s. Yeah, I think Carnival of Soul was like 62, and Last Man on Earth probably 62, 63, and then this one obviously 68. But
Yeah.
I think.
Well, they're all within a similar time frame. They're all zombie movies. Do you have a preference of the three? Like, how would you rate those three zombie films?
I would say Night of the Living Dead #1, Last Man on Earth, a little campier, I think, but just from a personal standpoint, nostalgic even, I would label it #2. Carnival of Souls, I actually only saw it one time, and I don't remember being overly impressed by it, but again, it's something I would need to revisit because I know it's considered a great one. So
Yeah, I think the writer is called Ambrose Bierce, I think is how you pronounce his name. But he is a writer that did a lot of stories like um, he was dead the whole time, like a lot of short stories like that. And you know that definitely has the same kind of structure, Carnival of Souls, where it's like the character was dead the whole time. Yeah, so A Night at the Old Creek Bridge, I think, was a Twilight Zone episode as well. That was an Ambrose Bierce one. But yeah, basically he wrote stories like that, and I think Carnival of Souls was heavily inspired by his type of writing. And you've probably seen a million movies where like the character is dead the whole time, Jacob's Ladder and stuff like that. Ambrose Bierce was
The Sixth Sense also.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, so what did you think of the gas station sequence? There are two sequences in this movie, and I wonder, is it the characters are flawed or was the script flawed? The first one is their escape plan with the gas station, which completely blows up in their face, literally. But you have the young kid who's thinking like, hey, I'm the guy for the job. Like I've worked with these pumps and stuff like that before. And you have, of course, Dwayne Jones, the main hero of the film. And he goes out and he shoots a gas pump. And then the guy who's familiar with gas pumps pours it all over the truck. And then they drive off. So is that a flaw in the script, or do you think that was intentional to make the characters look like they didn't know what they were doing?
I guess my guess would be it was. My guess is it was in the script, but clearly it's a fail. And I think I always thought they just wanted to kill more people off. It was a unique way to do it. Plus, it was a chance to give our zombies a really nice warm meal. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a cooked meal.
Yeah, some barbecue.
Yeah, because there was some good flesh eating sequences right then and there, and perhaps some of the better ones in the film.
Yeah, this film was a very talky film, and there was even a scene in the basement where the husband and wife were talking. When she was like, "Hey, you just want to be right. We should go upstairs. Our daughter's not feeling well." And actually, there was an odd cut. I don't know if you noticed in there, and that was because they had cut out 8 minutes of exposition in the basement.
Let's go up. Tom? If Judy would come downstairs for a few minutes.
Because they felt there was too much talking at that point in the movie. And it was just 8 minutes of just pure exposition, and they just cut it out. And it's a very jarring cut. I've noticed it but I didn't realize until I read about it today that it was actually 8 minutes of dialogue they actually cut out of the movie.
No, I
In
didn't
the
notice that.
basement. Yeah, yeah. So they wanted to speed it up a little bit, get more, get back to the action. Um, and there was a big discussion about the basement.
The cellar's the safest place.
I'm telling you, they can't get in here.
And I'm telling you, those things turned over our car. We were damn lucky to get away at all. Now you tell me those things can't get through this lousy pile of wood?
His wife and kids downstairs. The kid's hurt.
Well, I still think we're better off up here.
Our hero does not want to go in the basement, and our villain does. And in the end, it turns out that if they would have been in the basement, they would have all been fine. And
Right.
you know, and Ben goes to the basement and he survives a zombie attack. Again, do you think that's a flawed character or bad storytelling, and they should have told it differently to make our hero look a little bit smarter?
Well, I guess in the context of the film, uh, they don't know what's going on, and all they know is that there are dead people walking around. For all they know, everybody's dead, and there's not a whole lot of people left. I don't know if I would consider it quite a flaw, because in that situation, maybe I might feel the same way. You might feel safer in the basement, but you're also trapped in the basement. There's no way out if something gets in. Um, so I don't personally, I don't think it was a horrible idea not to go down there.
Mhm,
As long as that house is boarded up and fine, I would stay in the house.
mhm.
Give
Yeah,
you a few options if something does happen.
yeah. Well, in the basement, you mean, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I read some interesting thing about Dwayne Jones, because obviously 1968, you're talking about a tumultuous time in the States, a lot of racial tensions,
Hmm.
something we know nothing about in this day and age. But there was some interesting things going on that I read up about that I thought were worth mentioning. Dwayne Jones was cast because he was the best actor for the part. It wasn't that they were necessarily seeking a black actor. But when he did get the role, he wanted to play up the racial aspect of it more. But Romero didn't think that was necessary. Later, after Jones died, Romero said he regretted it. He wished he would have played it up more. What do you think about the people interpreting the movie in a racial way? Well, it wasn't intended that way, but you do have a black man with a gun holding people up in a house, including a white woman, and you have this mob of, portrayed to be rednecks coming there
Good old
and
boys.
killing him. Yeah. It wasn't intentional. They've already said that, but interpreting it that way, do you think it works that way, or do you think people who interpret that way are reaching?
Um, I honestly never even gave it much thought. I mean, to me, it's like you said, they just cast him because he was the best man for the part. And honestly, if I were in that position, I don't think you need to play it up. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think, just treat him like he's just a regular character or a regular person, whether he's black, white, or whatever. He's just the right man for the job, and I personally don't think you need it. Now, maybe Romero had a change of heart years later, but I don't think it was necessary to play it up. Do you disagree, or?
Well, as far as the exact question was, do I think people are reading too much into it? I don't, because I think once you put a film out there, whatever your intentions are, people are free to interpret it how they want. Should they have played it up? Having not been around in 68, just thinking about what I've read about that time, you're talking about a little over 10 years after Emmett Till was killed. I'm not sure if you are
I am.
familiar with
Yep.
Emmett
Yep.
Till.
Yep.
Just for our listeners who aren't familiar with him, he was a 14-year-old boy who was lynched because he was accused of offending a white woman. And the people that lynched him were set free. And that set off a lot of the civil rights stuff going on. And then you're talking about shortly after the film was released, Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Hmm.
So you do have, again, you have Martin Luther King being shot, and then you have this film with a black character being shot at the end. You do have the parallels with the white woman and this mob coming at him. So I think if they would have played it up, it would have enhanced the film as far as with his social commentary. And you can see that like Romero leaned into that in his other films after that. I think he played up the social commentary even more. While this was accidental, I don't think any of the social commentary in his other films were. Like he
See,
leaned into it strongly.
conversely, you could also say that by not playing it up, it speaks even higher volumes because he's just a normal, regular person. No matter what his color is, he's just doing what he needs to do. That might speak volumes too. You know, not playing up the racial aspect might actually say more than if you're actually trying to.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to argue either way because the film was so successful. And even if you say like me, they should have played it up. Well, people read into it anyway. So maybe playing it up didn't matter because people saw the racial elements even though it wasn't intended. So it's hard to argue the way when you're talking about a film that was successful and is considered a classic. The first film that was registered with the Library of Congress as well. So
I think that's correct. Yep.
yeah. So yeah, it's hard to argue when the results are as good as they are. Yeah, a few other interesting things about him. But I guess the main other thing I'll mention was that he actually died. People say he died a troubled guy. At least one of the people who befriended him, Marilyn, who played Helen. Everyone said they liked him on set, but she said she felt he died a troubled man because of all the racial tension that happened during the 60s. I think he eventually died in 88. And ironically, he became good friends with Carl Hardman, who played Harry, who was the guy he was fighting with. And then, according to what I've read online, like when you ask Carl about him, even after his death to today, he's very shaken up about it because they were such good friends. But it's ironic that people, you see them on screen, they're enemies, but in real life, they actually.
Sure. Didn't he am I wrong? I thought I read once he became like a teacher or a college professor or something.
Carl, you're saying, or
Dwayne.
Dwayne. I didn't read that as plausible. He was an academic when he did the film.
Okay.
And that was why they changed him to a smarter character, because he was supposed to be like a dumb, tough guy. But then they realized, like, hey, we got this really smart guy. Let's change up his character. So, yeah, him being a teacher or teaching sounds plausible, because none of these people went on to do a ton of acting afterwards. So.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's again, I didn't want to focus too much on the film because I'm assuming everyone knows what happens in the movie and have seen it already. So I just thought those were some interesting things I read. Anything else you want to add? Or?
No, again, like I said, I consider this movie a classic. In fact, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe, I went to the cemetery where the beginning of the film was filmed, and had a picture taken by one of the gravestones that Barbara was leaning against at the time. And it's interesting. You can look online; you'll see plenty of pictures of that particular scene. But other people have done the same thing I did, because you could see on the headstone that she was holding, it's worn off. The concrete has worn away a bit from people holding it, touching it. So, but it was kind of cool just seeing that site again. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ironic because I actually read that they picked that site because it was so isolated, but now it's become like a tourist spot because they shot there.
Yeah, so. I want to say it was somewhere, I think northwest of Pittsburgh a little bit, but yeah, it's not the easiest thing to find either. It's still kind of out there a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds based on like a few of these reviews we've done, it sounds like you visited a lot of sites for movies you've watched.
I actually have not visited a lot, but I have seen a few. Like I said, I've been to Texas Chainsaw. I went to one of those sites. I tried to visit a site where Phantasm was filmed, but it was kind of closed off. I couldn't get in there. And then obviously Night of the Living Dead. I did see the mall where Dawn of the Dead was filmed also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things. We do take a lot of road trips and such. And if I find out that something was filmed here or there, I'll try to make a point to stop. But finding out that information is always not so easy either. So, but yeah, if I know something's there, I'll go seek it out.
Mm-hmm. So you also said, wasn't there somewhere in the pit you went to see as well, or no?
I didn't. Well, like the pit was filmed about 45 minutes from where I live, and I've been to the town, but years ago when I stopped there for the first time, we were looking for some sites. The person at the gas station said pretty much all those sites are gone. The library is gone. This is gone. I'm sure I could find the house if I knew where it was. The neighborhood is still there, but a lot of the sites that you see in the movie just aren't there anymore. So, but I would be interested to see some of the stuff where the pit was them, because it's one of my favorites. I love it. So.
Okay, I guess I misread it because I remember you mentioned something about the pit, which was the first review we did. Texas Chainsaw, this one, and I think there was one other movie you had mentioned that you had either visited or there was some connection. Freaks. Didn't you say something about the graveside of the,
Yeah, I didn't visit it, but they did create a headstone where one did not exist.
Oh, you just
before.
brought up the fact. You just brought it up as a fact.
Right.
Oh, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yep.
remembered wrong then. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Yeah. I mean, classic movie. Definitely check out the movie online on YouTube, right where you're watching this, if you haven't seen it. I am not an original guy, much like a bunch of other filmmakers. After watching this, my first movie was a zombie haunted house movie, House of the Damned. And yeah, much like a lot of filmmakers, you see this movie, it becomes public domain, you watch it a ton, and you think, hey, I can do that. You know, you shoot black and white, you can go day for night, night for day. A lot of your mistakes are covered up in black and white. You do zombies. I did oatmeal in the actor's mouth to make them zombies, and that was it. It cost me like a couple $100 tops, just a couple of people. You get them in a house together, and that's it. So yeah, I did that when I was like a teenager. But yeah, much like, you know, a lot of filmmakers, this is a very inspirational film from that standpoint. So
Cool.
yeah, definitely hit home with me. So yeah, I guess I'm not mad that we did it after all then.
It's a great film. It's a great film.
Yeah, everybody should check it out.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes. Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.